Muito bem, dentro da nossa programação, eu convido então Russ Fleming para a palestra O Mercado de Sprinklers, uma perspectiva global. Russ Fleming é Managing Director da IFSA e presidente da NFSA.
It's a great pleasure to be here, and I would like to start by congratulating the CBSpk on what appears to be a very successful conference. It is hard to believe that it was less than 5 years ago that the IFSA chairman, Nick Gross, who was here with us at this conference, and John Vaniello, as you've heard about, and Brendan McGrath from FM Global, and myself came to Sao Paulo and worked with Marcelo Lima of FM to meet with representatives of the Brazilian fire sprinkler industry and talk about the possibility of forming such an organization. And it is extremely gratifying to see all the progress that has been made in the past few years leading up to this conference. As you've got the impression from Mr. LaRue, in the United States we are very positive about automatic fire sprinklers. And the reason we are so positive about automatic fire sprinklers is that they have worked so well for so long. In the United States, the National Fire Protection Association was keeping records of sprinkler performance over a long period of time. And the record of sprinkler performance was exceptional, over 96% effective in fires. In fact, many of you may not know this bit of trivia, but the National Fire Protection Association, which is well known around the world, was actually formed originally to write a standard on how to install automatic fire sprinkler systems. It was an effort that involved Frederick Grinnell, one of the leaders in the industry, and a group of insurance representatives. They wrote the first copy of what is now NFPA 13. And it was such a successful effort that they went on to do other things and form the National Fire Protection Association. But among those other things was this compilation of sprinkler performance. Of course, they also looked at why sprinkler systems don't work and the few fires in which they don't work. And what they found over the years, again and again, is that the primary reason that sprinkler systems don't work when that happens is because they are not in service, because of closed valves more than 2/3 of the time. So it points to the need to have fire sprinkler systems and to keep them in service. And we'll be hearing a lot about those points over today and the course of tomorrow. Now, the U.S. is not the only place that believes in fire sprinkler systems and has had good experience with fire sprinkler systems. In Australia and New Zealand, a gentleman named Harry Marriott kept track of sprinkler performance over an initial period shown here and then extended it to 100 years of service. And they found that sprinkler systems performed successfully far more than the 96% of the time. And in fact, sprinkler systems performed effectively 99.8% of the time. And these are actually more reliable figures because in Australia and New Zealand, they actually track, as a matter of law, the performance of sprinkler systems in every fire. And so it was shown that with proper inspection, testing, and maintenance of systems, sprinkler systems could be counted on to control fires nearly 100% of the time. Now here's something else I want to share with you. And this is an analysis that was done by the U.S. General Services Administration as part of their mandate for a Federal Fire Service Act that took place in the United States in 1992. And the General Services Administration asked the scientists at the National Institute of Standards and Technology to describe for them what they could expect from an automatic fire sprinkler system, because they wanted to compare alternatives. So they said to NIST, the scientists at NIST, What does an automatic fire sprinkler system do? And these are the three things that NIST said you could count on an automatic sprinkler system to do. Prevent flashover in the room of fire origin. Limit the fire size to no more than 1 megawatt in size, and prevent flames from leaving the room of origin. So those were the three things, the cornerstones of what they could guarantee would be achieved with a properly functioning automatic fire sprinkler system. Now, what's also important to realize is this point, that there is simply no other fire protection measure that can accomplish these goals outside of preventing the fire in the first place. So automatic fire sprinkler systems hold a unique place in the field of fire protection and fire protection engineering. Well, we recognized this in North America quite some time ago. It became apparent through our fire statistics. And over the last fourth of the 20th century, the use of sprinklers in the United States and Canada increased by a factor of 4, as our building codes incorporated more and more requirements and incentives to use automatic sprinkler systems. So sprinkler system use increased by a factor of 4 between 1975 and the year 2000. And we saw the effects of this. According to fire death rate comparisons that came from the National Fire Protection Association, the fire death rates in the United States and Canada declined during the same period that sprinkler usage was increasing, and got more in line with those of countries that practice better fire safety measures, where basically the populations are a little more careful, and where also you see less use of combustible construction. Pure statistics from the National Fire Protection Association also support the advantages of having automatic fire sprinkler systems in buildings. The reports coming out of NFPA show that there is a reduction of civilian fire deaths in occupancies that have sprinkler systems, as shown here, and also a tremendous reduction in average property loss in various occupancies. So sprinklers do make a difference. But we suspect that these figures underestimate the true impact of sprinklers, because not all fires are reported in the United States, especially small fires. And automatic sprinkler systems almost guarantee small fires. We found from statistics that most fires are controlled or extinguished by 1 or 2 sprinklers operating. And with high insurance deductibles and consequences of reporting fires, very often building owners do not want to have the small sprinkler successes reported. So as it states here, because our statistics only capture those reported to fire departments, we think the actual usage of sprinklers is estimated to be greater, and reduction in losses is actually greater than what I just showed you. But we do show in general that sprinkler systems do save lives and reduce property losses. And in fact, the data indicates that the ability of sprinklers to reduce fire deaths in residential occupancies is at least 75%. Now let's talk for a minute about the International Fire Sprinkler Association. I sort of want to pick up where Bruce LaRue left off. If you look at the mission statement of the International Fire Sprinkler Association, you'll see that it is about the global fire sprinkler market, because the organization exists to promote and enhance the business of manufacturing and installing fire sprinkler, water spray, and water mist systems in all buildings, from homes to high-rise, with the highest degree of competence and professionalism for the purpose of saving lives and protecting property. And there is a separate mission statement for IFSA, or vision, if you will, that is shown here, whereby the IFSA hopes to become a worldwide center for information in automatic water-based fire suppression systems and the leader in advancing the widespread use of such systems. Years ago, the IFSA took a look at how it could accomplish that vision and basically came up with these 4 points
these 4 ways to accomplish the vision. And we'll take these one by one. So IFSA Goal 1 is the development of national and regional organizations, fostering the development of organizations whose activities would increase the use of competently installed automatic water-based fire suppression systems for the purpose of saving lives and protecting property. Bruce LaRue talked about some of the organizations that IFSA has supported over the 15 years of its existence. These are the organizations which IFSA has supported financially in various parts of the world. And 2 of those organizations, the IFSA have a hand in forming. Both the European Fire Sprinkler Network and here in Brazil, CBSpk. IFSA Goal 2 is the development of information systems to protect product integrity and industry identity. And the goal here is to pursue efforts and relationships that promote the widespread distribution of accurate industry information while also protecting the separate and distinct identity of the automatic water-based fire suppression systems industry. But as part of that goal is also protecting product integrity. That's a key factor, protecting product integrity. We want to make sure the devices that get out into the marketplace will do what they're supposed to do. And in order to protect the excellent record of sprinkler protection that you saw there from the earlier statistics, we all must be on guard against counterfeit products and non-certified products. And this is where I start talking about the size of the worldwide market because it plays into this somewhat. Now the numbers I'm going to show you are very inexact, and they're based on a practice that the IFSA has had in existence for some time, whereby every year we reach out to people in different parts of the world and ask them what their opinion is on how many sprinklers are installed in various parts of the world. And we ask them to also tell us whether they have a high degree of confidence or a low degree of confidence. Now there are a few countries and areas of the world where they actually track sprinkler usage. Some government agency is tracking the number of sprinklers installed. But for example, there's no such organization in the United States, no such organization in Canada. And so we have to rely on people who are knowledgeable about the industry to give us their best guesses as to how many sprinklers are being installed in various countries. And then we total these and we produce a graphic which looks something like this. Now, as you can see here, overall the news has been very good over the past few decades. There is growing worldwide use of automatic fire sprinklers. We've had some setbacks because at the times when economic conditions deteriorate, you tend to see less new construction, especially the non-residential construction, which traditionally has been the strongest area of usage for fire sprinkler systems. And yet, even with these economic recessions, as you saw around the turn of the century, and most recently that started with an economic collapse in 2008, we have seen continued growth. And basically a tripling of the market, such that in 2013 it's estimated that there were about 142 million sprinklers installed worldwide. And so this will lead to greater fire safety worldwide. Now for those of you who are wondering who uses the most sprinklers in the world, well, it used to be the United States. But with the recession starting in 2008, which bottomed out in 2010 in the US, it's been a gradual climb back from those low points in the US. We're in a period of improvement, but we have not yet reached our pre-recession levels. In the meantime, in other parts of the world, particularly Asia, we've seen a steady, very impressive growth in the use of sprinklers, especially in China. And China, with its growing economy, actually overtook the US a couple of years ago. I'll show you that in a minute. But in terms of where sprinkler usage is by continent, I want to show you some pie charts that reflect the shift that has taken place over the past 20 years. If you looked at the estimates, and again, they are very rough estimates, If you looked at those estimates by continent, back in 1994, there were about 40 million sprinklers being used, and the bulk of those were in the United States and Canada. So the pie chart looked like this. The green area is Europe, and the purplish area is Asia. But if you move up to more toward the present time, even though we are using more sprinklers in North America, our percentage of the total world market has shrunk, as there has been a tremendous increase in the number of sprinklers used in Asia. Europe has also grown, but doesn't occupy that much more of the pie chart. And I promised to show you what happened in the US and China. Leading into our recession, it was estimated that the US was still installing more sprinklers, but the Chinese did not have the same economic setbacks that we had in North America, and so they surpassed us at that time and are continuing to use more sprinklers at the present time. But this gets into the area of what is a sprinkler. You know, when we ask people to do those evaluations, some people are only thinking about what we would call the legitimate sprinkler market because of these product integrity concerns. There is a growing use of counterfeit or non-certified products which can compromise the safety and protection afforded by the systems. All of us have an obligation to ensure that fire sprinkler systems will continue their record of high performance, and as part of that, component products should be certified by a reputable, independent certification organization. When we talk about the installation of sprinklers that are counterfeit or non-certified, perhaps we should be talking about some type of anti-sprinkler. Because the more of those that are out there, the worse it is for those of us who want to promote the legitimate fire sprinkler industry. They hold the potential to have a fire in which the sprinkler system does not effectively operate and give the entire fire sprinkler movement a setback around the world. So users of sprinklers should confirm that the product is authorized to have a certification mark, that it in fact has a certification mark and is authorized to have a certification mark, since counterfeiting is a large and growing problem. Now, I borrowed some slides from Carrie Bell, who was one of the speakers at the conference in Panama that you heard about recently. Carrie Bell represents Underwriters Laboratories, but of course, one of our other exhibitors here is FM Approvals, and those are the two organizations that we rely upon in North America for product certification. There are other organizations involved in product certification around the world. And while I'll be talking about the tests that UL conducts as part of its Standard 199 for sprinklers, these are very close to the tests conducted by all of the legitimate certification bodies. Because for the past 40 years, those bodies have been working with manufacturers in the international context to develop standards for fire sprinkler related products. And that work has been done through the International Standards Organization, ISO Technical Committee 21, Subcommittee 5, works on the equipment standards for water-based fire protection components. In fact, Victoria Valentine from the NFSA staff who taught here yesterday has been in recent years serving as the international secretary to that group. And again, that group has been meeting for 40 years and has developed what are considered backbone standards for automatic sprinklers and related equipment. And those backbone standards contain many of these same tests. Now, the tests that are applied to sprinklers fall into these 5 categories: physical strength and leakage tests, operation tests, exposure and corrosion tests, water flow and distribution tests, and fire tests. In fact, when we talk about this, it often amazes people that so many individual tests are needed for such a small product. But it must be tested in a variety of different ways because it has to perform for a long time. And when I say perform for a long time, a lot of that performance is just being ready for a fire. It has to sit there for decades. And then when the fire comes, it has to be ready to respond effectively. So in terms of the testing, in those first categories of physical strength, operation tests, and exposure tests, even in those first 3 areas, these are the type of tests applied to the product to make sure that it will properly operate when needed. Again, these are just aimed at making sure the device actuates, essentially, to make sure that it hasn't succumbed to corrosion or impact problems. There are all sorts, as you can see, you can read these dozens of individual tests relating from everything from the possibility of water hammer to dezincification, antifreeze exposure. I'm not going to read the whole list, but these have been developed over years and years of experience with what could go wrong with a sprinkler product. And so we've used that more than 100 years of experience in developing the appropriate tests to check that a product will work effectively after decades of sitting at the ceiling level. In the area of water flow tests in distribution, these are the tests that, the type of tests that are used to make sure the sprinkler, once it actuates, will properly distribute water appropriate to its expected performance needs for a given fire. And some of these vary with the type of sprinkler. And then, of course, in addition to water flow and distribution tests, the certification bodies conduct actual fire tests to make sure that the sprinkler has the ultimate capability of being able to control the fire. And these fire tests vary again with the type of sprinkler and its intended application. From room-based tests for the type of sprinklers that are installed in residential occupancies to large full-scale fire tests for some of the more demanding storage challenges. Here's another slide I borrowed from Carrie Bell, and it just shows one counterfeit sprinkler that they encountered and the results of one particular test. This particular sprinkler, which was a counterfeit or non-certified sprinkler, I can't remember which, was subjected to an 800°C exposure test. Now, these tests are needed for fire equipment, especially if the sprinklers and other devices might be used in dry systems, or if the fire department might, for some reason, turn off the system at some point during the fire to check conditions, which we don't recommend, but it does happen. And this particular sprinkler started melting after 1 minute of that exposure. And you can see here, there's virtually no sprinkler left, no frame. So this is the type of thing that, if allowed to reach the marketplace, can really hurt our industry. In terms of identifying non-certified products, you want to ask yourself, if you're the type of person who's buying sprinklers, is there something wrong with the price? Is the price of the product substantially lower than the price for the same product from other sources? Is the source of the product authorized by the manufacturer to supply their product? If a counterfeit is suspected, compare it to a known authentic version to identify any differences in construction and marking. UL has pointed out that many counterfeit products have an aesthetically pleasing finish, a nice looking plating or coating, which hides the use of inferior materials. Search for public notices issued by certification organizations or others regarding counterfeit products. If there's the slightest concern regarding the authenticity of a product, contact the manufacturer or the certifying organization. And of course, at the least, look for the authorized certification mark on the product. So let's move ahead with IFSA goals. One is the delivery of training and education, to deliver programs of training and education that further the efforts of the organization. And I'm pleased to report that since its founding in 1999, the IFSA has supported training about fire sprinkler systems on 6 continents. Still haven't gotten down to Antarctica to talk about fire sprinkler systems down there, but every place else, the IFSA has set foot out there and is out there talking about how to properly install sprinkler systems. And as you heard about the most recent conference in Panama earlier this year, but the IFSA was the primary host of the whole series of international fire sprinkler conferences that took place in Europe over the past decade. in Prague in 2002, Berlin in 2004, Lisbon in 2006, and Copenhagen in 2008. And then we turned over those conferences in Europe to the European Fire Sprinkler Network. And that's ultimately the goal everywhere of the International Fire Sprinkler Association, to see the growth of organizations that then take off on their own and do such great work, such as the CBSpk is doing here at this conference. IFSA Goal 4 is enhancement of codes, standards, and legislation. And our goal there is to work with international organizations in the enhancement of codes, standards, and legislation, while serving as a resource for parallel local and national efforts. And in that area, the IFSA and the organizations it supports regularly work to increase requirements for sprinklers in hotels, care homes, road tunnels, other high-risk occupancies around the world. We would like nothing more than to see a gradual improvement in building regulations worldwide to recognize the value and the need for sprinklers. You'll see here also that IFSA maintains a liaison with various technical committees that deal with sprinkler system equipment quality, and we promote the use of hydraulic calculations worldwide as well, because we feel that you need to match the strength of the water supply with the demands of the fire sprinkler system. And finally, IFSA has testified about the effectiveness of fire sprinkler systems before legislative groups in several parts of the world, including here in Brazil. So in summary, I want to thank you for all of your efforts on behalf of fire sprinklers worldwide. I think together we're on a very important mission. Automatic fire sprinkler systems do save lives, they save property. And I know I started out by saying we're very enthusiastic about sprinkler systems in the United States. And I know that you wouldn't be here in this room unless you were also enthusiastic about automatic fire sprinkler systems here in Brazil. And I thank you for that.